Hi everyone. In this video lesson, I'm going to narrate to you a story written by the famous Irish poet, fiction writer, and essayist Oscar Wilde. The story is called The Nightingale and the Rose. So, shall we begin? Okay, here we go. There once lived a young student who fell in love with a professor's daughter. He loved her so much and wanted to dance with her. But the girl said that she would dance with the boy only if he brought her red roses. That's easy, right? Red roses are available everywhere and it's so easy to get them. But that was not the case then. It was a time of winter and there weren't any red roses to be found. The boy felt so sad and cried out aloud. She said she would dance with me if I brought her red roses, but in all my garden there is no red rose. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He had read all that wise men had written and he knew all the secrets of philosophy. He was such a learned student, but for want or lack of a red rose, he felt very sad or miserable. Now, hearing the young student's sad cry, there sat a nightingale in her nest in the nearby oak tree. The nightingale is a type of songbird. The nightingale felt that she had at last found a true lover. Night after night she had sung about the true lover, but she had never met such a person until then in her life. She looked at the student through the leaves of the oak tree and found him sitting under the tree. The student's hair was as dark as a hyacinth blossom, and his lips were as red as a red rose, but his face looked pale and sad. The young student sat under the oak tree and murmured that the prince was giving a ball the next night. A ball is a dance party. The student's lover, the professor's daughter, would be there at their dance party. She had told him that she would dance with him till the early hours of the morning if only he brought her red roses. But the boy's garden didn't have any red roses at that time of the year, and he knew that the girl wouldn't dance with him if he failed to bring her red roses. He was heartbroken. Listening to all that the young student said, the nightingale was overjoyed. She had at last found the true lover. Sitting under the tree, the young student wept aloud, thinking about how his lover would dance to the music the next day and how he wouldn't be able to join her. A little green lizard saw the student crying and asked why he was crying. A daisy flower also wondered why the student was crying. The nightingale told both the lizard and the daisy that the student was crying for a red rose. The lizard and the daisy could not believe their ears. They thought it was silly to cry for a red rose and started laughing. But the nightingale did not laugh, for she understood the young student's sadness and pain and the love he had for the professor's daughter. The nightingale decided to help the young student and flew up from the oak tree. She flew to the center of the grass plot where stood a beautiful rose tree. "Give me a red rose, and I will sing you my sweetest song," the nightingale told the rose tree. But the rose tree said that its roses were white. It added, "Go to my brother who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want." So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing round the old sundial. "Give me a red rose," she said, "and I will give you my sweetest song." But the rose tree answered that its roses were yellow and asked the nightingale to go to the rose tree that grew under the student's window. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window and repeated its request, "Give me a red rose, and I will sing you my sweetest song." But the rose tree that grew beneath the student's window answered that though its roses were red, winter had frozen its veins, and the frost had nipped its buds, and the storm had broken its branches, and so it could have no roses at all that year. "One red rose is all I want," cried the nightingale. "Only one red rose. Is there no way by which I can get it?" The rose tree then answered that there was one way, but she did not want to tell it because it was so terrible or so bad. But the nightingale said that she wanted to know it. And so the rose tree told her that if she wanted a red rose, she should sing to the rose tree on a moonlit night with her breast against a thorn of the rose tree. All night long, the nightingale had to sing like that, the rose tree told the nightingale. The thorn must tear open the heart of the nightingale, and lifeblood must flow into my veins, added the rose tree. In short, what the rose tree said was that the nightingale had to give up its life for it to get a red rose from the rose tree. The nightingale thought for a while and said that death was such a great price to pay for a red rose. She felt that life was precious or valuable and that it was a joy to sit in the forest and watch the sun and the moon. She also thought that the smell of flowers like hawthorn, bluebells, heather, etc. was sweet. But she finally concluded that even though life was beautiful, love was better than life. She thought that the heart of a man was much more precious than the heart of a bird. Having decided to give up her life, the nightingale flew up from there and returned to the grass plot where the student was lying. He was still very sad. The nightingale cried out to the student to be happy and told him that he would have his red rose. She said that she would build the red rose out of her own heart's blood. All that she wanted in return was for him to be a true lover. The student looked up and saw the nightingale above, but he could not understand anything that the nightingale was trying to tell him. He only knew the things that were written in books. But the oak tree understood all that the nightingale said, and it felt very sad. The oak tree loved the nightingale that had built her nest on its branches. So the oak tree asked the bird to sing one last song to it, and the nightingale sang to the oak tree in its beautiful voice. When the nightingale had finished her song, the student got up from the grass he was lying on and took out a notebook and a pencil. Well, we don't know why he took out that notebook and pencil. Maybe he wanted to write a letter to his lover, or maybe he wanted to pen down his thoughts. We have no idea. When the moon came out at night, the nightingale flew to the red rose tree and did as she was told. She set her breast against the thorn on the rose tree and started singing. She sang all through the night with her breast against the thorn. She sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper into her breast. Blood flowed out from her. As blood slowly flowed out from the nightingale, on the topmost twig of the rose tree, there blossomed a beautiful rose, petal by petal, as song followed song. But the rose tree asked the nightingale to press its breast closer to the thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer and closer against the thorn until it touched her heart. Severe pain shot through her. As the pain became bitter, her song grew wilder and louder. She sang of love that never died. The beautiful rose became bright red like the color of the eastern sky. But the nightingale's voice grew weaker. Her wings began to beat, and a film came over her eyes. Weaker and weaker became her song, and she felt as if she could no longer sing. She gathered all her courage, all her energy, and gave one last burst of music. The moon, hearing it, forgot to go back, even when it was time for the day to arrive. The red rose heard the song, and in extreme happiness, it opened its petals to the cold morning air. Look, look, cried the tree, the rose is finished now. But the nightingale did not answer back, for she lay dead in the grass with a thorn in her heart. At noon, the student opened his window, looked out, and saw the red rose. He was so surprised and cried out that it was his great luck to get that rose. He had never seen such a beautiful red rose in his entire life. He leaned down and plucked the flower. Then he put on his hat and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. He wanted to gift it to his love, the professor's daughter. The professor's daughter was sitting in the doorway, winding blue silk on a reel, and her little dog lay at her feet. You said that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose, said the student. Here is the reddest rose in all the world. You will wear it tonight next to your heart, and we will dance together. But the girl frowned and told the student, I'm sorry, I don't think the rose will suit my dress. She added that the Chamberlain's nephew had sent her some real costly jewels, and she was planning to wear it the next day. Chamberlain is an officer in charge of managing the household of a ruler, especially in the UK and in Denmark. Nephew is the son of one's brother or sister. So when the professor's daughter said this, the young student got very angry and called her unthankful. He threw the rose into the street, where it fell into a gutter or ditch, and the wheel of a cart went over it. What a silly thing love is, said the student as he walked away. So, what do you people think of love? Do you, like the student, think that love is silly? Or do you, like the Nightingale, think that love is eternal? I leave you with that thought.